We're holding now the Masechta Chagiga, the second part of the Masechta, Tumah Tahara. Though more or less, if not all, most of Tumah Tahara is not relevant Bizman Hazeh. We even touched upon it last week's Shiur, and Chayav Adam L'Tar Atzmai Beregel if it's Negei Bizman Hazeh. However, these are mitzvah d'Rabbanan that's yes noyeg Bizman Hazeh that is connected to Tumah Tahara. That's the mitzvah of Natilas Yadayim before eating bread. These are mitzvah d'Rabbanan of Natilas Yadayim. Right here on Daf Yud Chesam at Beis. To be able to properly go through it and understand, I would like to back up and speak a bit about another part of this mitzvah, also the mitzvah of Natilas Yadayim. That's not the mitzvah of being noitel Yadayim before you eat a Suda, but the mitzvah to wash your hands in the morning. We make a bracha every morning, Asher Kedishanu b'mitzvaysav etzivon al Natilas Yadayim, a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. Clearly, it's a mitzvah, we make the bracha. The Mekoyer is a Gemara in Brachas Taf Samach at Beis. The Gemara says, Ki mashi yodei, when a person washes his hand, the Gemara of the Brachas goes through all the different brachas that a person makes in the morning, and the Gemara says, when you wash your hands in the morning, you make a bracha, Asher Kedishanu b'mitzvaysav etzivon al Natilas Yadayim. Brought lahalacha and Siman Daled, the beginning of Scheiner Chaim, to wash your hands on Natilas Yadayim. Is a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. What's the reason for this mitzvah? When I say this mitzvah, I mean this part of the mitzvah to wash your hands in the morning. The Rosh, the Beis Yosef brings the Rosh, that because when a person is sleeping, a person's hands move all over the place, and he touches places, places that that are not clean. Therefore, the Chachamim said that a person in the morning, when he gets up, before davening and before saying Kriya Shema, you should wash your hands. The Shulchan Aruch says that this is only for davening and for Shema, and not for brachas. Just to understand clearly, we're talking about the mitzvah, the Rabbanan of Natilas Yadayim in the morning. We make the bracha. This is something not connected at all to what we're all very familiar with, that by night is a Ruach Ra, and you're supposed to wash your hands to take away the Ruach Ra. That has its own set of dinim. One case of Ruach Ra is when you wake up in the morning. But if you look in Siman Daled, there's a whole sif of many different cases that you wash your hands up in a Ruach Ra. For an example, a person goes into the bathroom. Maybe Bizman Hazeh it's different, but a person goes into a bathroom, the tumah in the bathroom, you have to wash your hands. Over there you don't make al Natilas Yadayim. So we're talking about in the morning, a person wakes up, he has to wash his hands before davening, and you make al Natilas Yadayim, it's only before davening, not before brachas. To bring out this idea that a person has to wash his hands before davening, if somebody woke up at 6 a.m. and of course he washed his hands because he has a Ruach Ra, then he's only davening at 9 o'clock. Shabbos morning, he got up at 5, his shul davens at 9:30. He learns, whatever he does. So the din is, in Shulchan Aruch and Siman Tzadik Beis Sif Hey, you have to wash your hands again. Why? Just like we mentioned, when a person's sleeping, his hands are all over the place, so too a person got up at 5:30 in the morning, and it's a few hours later that he's going to daven, you have to wash your hands again. Din Shulchan Aruch Siman Tzadik Beis Sif Hey. Rochatz Yadav Shachris, the Hesiach Daitoi. Of course, if he remembers exactly where his hands were the whole time, he doesn't have to. But if he's not sure, well, that's usually the case, we don't remember exactly where our hands went, scratched, touched, you need to wash your hands again. However, this time when you wash your hands, it's without a bracha. Why without a bracha? Because by night, when a person's asleep, it's vadai that he touched places, mutunafa is places that are not clean, that he has to wash his hands. However, in the morning when he's up until davening a few hours later, it's not vadai. It's possible that he touched places that are not clean, therefore he should wash his hands, but it's a suffix, so therefore you don't make the bracha. That's a very good question. What if he knows? So let's answer this question very momentarily, and you'll see in the next 2-3 minutes it's going to answer the question. Lefi this, mincha and ma'ariv as well also. Mincha and ma'ariv, you should have to wash your hands, and the truth is, it's brought in Shulchan Aruch, though maybe many, for whatever reason, don't do it, but the Shulchan Aruch and Siman Reish Lamed Gimel Sif Beis says clearly a person should wash his hands. Like what you just mentioned, very good. What's if a person knows before Shachris that he for sure touched b'makom l'tunafos? Should he make a bracha? Really, before Mincha, before Ma'ariv also, should you make a bracha? The Rambam says you make a bracha. And the Poskim say, lefi this reason in the Rosh, you should make a bracha. Before davening, before Mincha also, yes. You should make a bracha, but hold on. Yeah. So we'll get to a cup in a minute. Also, we'll see what the concept of cup is. So far, if the reason is mitunafa is to clean your hands, you really shouldn't need a cup, because it's just that you touch places that are dirty, so you don't need a cup. But we'll get to a cup. Be'ez Hashem soon. Also very good. L'chayr, what should come out, you should wash. If mincha ma'ariv, you should wash with a bracha. However, there's another reason. There's another reason to wash. In this washing in the morning that we make our Sher Kedishana mitzvah d'Rabbanan v'tilas yadayim, there's another reason in the Rishayim. The first reason was the Rashba, again, Makam etu nafis. The Rosh, the Rashba says the reason is bedoima, to when a kohen goes into the Beis HaMikdash, there's a mitzvah to wash his hands, because he's noitel yadav to go into the base before the avodah. So here also noitel yadav before the avodah, before davening. A different reason, not because you touched places that are not clean, just because you're going to do the avodah. Both of the reasons are focusing before davening. However, the second reason is not because you touched places that are not clean. It's just because a kohen that goes into the Beis HaMikdash there was a din for him to wash from the kiyur. It wasn't relevant, even if the kohen was 100% tar, there was a din to wash his hands. Therefore, says the Rashba, you wash in the morning, you're a beri chadasha, you wash your hands. Now, really, what's with mincha ma'ariv? Lamaisa, they didn't copy exactly like the kiyur. A kohen washed his feet also. We don't wash our feet, we only wash our hands. But Lamaisa, Mahai time also, the pashtas is, the feed of Rashba, that it's only in the morning. It's only in the morning, not mincha and ma'ariv. So being that it's a machlokes rishayim, the Olam brought up before, what's about a bracha, like you mentioned, if a person touches makam tunafis again, lefi the Rashba, it's not relevant b'chlal to that. Lefi the Rashba, you wash in the morning, like the kohen washed with the kiyur. So if a person gets up 5:30 in the morning, and he davens at 8 o'clock, in between, he may have touched the b'kaimas amatunafis. It doesn't make a difference. The reason why he washes is like a kohen that washes before he goes into the Beis HaMikdash. So very clear, we have two reasons over here. Either because he touched b'kaimas amatunafis, so then it should be relevant to wash again shachris if there was a big break. Mincha and ma'ariv as well. If he the Rashba, you only wash once.
You'll have to wash again.
Correct. Very good. The Rashba agrees that a person that touches Makaimas Amatunafis has to wash. Good, but that's not included in this mitzvah. And of course you don't make a bracha. So that's why lahalacha, a person should wash, if he touches Makaimas Amatunafis or even not sure, washes again before Shachris. And Mincha Ma'ariv as well, also you wash, because maybe you touch Makaimas Amatunafis. But for the second reason you don't, so lahalacha you wash, but without a bracha.
When you're putting on your tefillin, B'Shachris, I've seen a lot of people sometimes do it then.
praying a Shalom, so you start scratching your head. That wouldn't be enough reason to wash.
So yeah, there are people that taka wash their hands when they put on, after they put on the shalroish, they wash their hands before they say ve'erastach, before they finish up the thing. They taka do wash their hands. And there are people that are taka careful when they put on the shalroish not to scratch their hair. And chanami. Lamaisa, I want to just say that there's a lot more to speak in this part. This is really not so much the focus of the shiur, but I just want to bring out to be able to go to the other part of Netilas Yadayim before a Suda. But there's many halachas, and I'm just bringing out the pointer, the mitzvah and the reasons of the mitzvah. But you're right, there's a lot more halachas. And of course, what I didn't even go into b'chlal is about ruach ra. There's many halachas. You go to the bathroom also. That's on and on and on. You're going to two nafkaminos between the two reasons. Two nafkaminos. And from here we'll go on to the other Netilas Yadayim. One nafkamino lahalacha. The Bir Halacha says that if somebody sleeps by night with gloves, Lafi the reason of the rush, you don't have to. It's not negayah the mitzvah. You didn't touch b'makayim esamatanafim. You can't. You can wash, but you definitely can't make a bracha because if your hands are uncovered, it's vadai that you touch makayim esamatanafim. But if it's in gloves, you didn't touch. But Lafi the Rashba, the mitzvah is. Why do you wash hands? Bedoyim to the koyin with the kir, so your hands can be covered from today till tomorrow. It's nothing to do with tumah. You wash and with a bracha. And another nafkamina is what you mentioned before about a kli. Another nafkamina the Magen Avram brings right in the beginning of Sif Dal, Sif Katan Aleph, a kli. Lefi the reason of the rush that it's makayim asamatanafah is you don't need a kli. However, lefi the reason of the rashba bedoyim to the kir. So just like by the kir, it was with a kli, so too one should wash his hands with a kli. So lamaisa, we go with both reasons, and of course we're machmer whenever applicable. We don't make a bracha, and of course we wash with a kli. Now let's go into let's call it the other part of the mitzvah derabanan of Netilas Yadayim, which of course we're also very well aware of, is when we wash before HaMotzi. Tonight by the Suda, you wash your hands, and it's a mitzvah derabanan. One of the mitzvahs derabanan, Sher Kedishana b'mitzvaysa v'tzivan al Netilas Yadayim. So the Mekoyer for this mitzvah, obviously it's brought right here in the Mishnah, Daf Yud Ches Amud Beis, but let's back up. The Mekoyer for the mitzvah is actually by Truma. It's really even a step before that. Shlomo HaMelech was Mesaken Netilas Yadayim. Shlomo HaMelech was Mesaken Netilas Yadayim by Karbonos. Shammai v'Hillel, or Beis Shammai Beis Hillel, extended it into Truma. What is it, Takanah? So the Gemara says in Shabbos Daf Yud Gimel Amud Beis, the Gemara says Yudches Dover Gozru by Truma. 18 Takanos, cautions, Zehiris for Truma. And one of them V'hayadayim. What does it mean V'hayadayim? Rashi explains V'hayadayim that before you eat or even touch Truma, you have to wash the hands. But often, that if a person touches Truma and he didn't wash his hands before it passes the Truma, it's not Me'ikar Adin. Before this Takanah of Shammai and Hillel, if a person touches Truma, it doesn't become possible. Why would it become possible? But it becomes possible. Why did they make this Takanah? Why was it relevant that if you touch Truma, it passes the Truma? Why is it Negeya? L'may nafkamida. So the Gemara says later, Daf Yudal Amud Beis, the Gemara says, Mepnei shahiyadayim askani yasem. Yeah, a person's hands are all over the place. We're already familiar with this concept. We just heard this from the Rosh, Lagabi the mitzvah of the morning, but the Gemara says, shahiyadayim askani yasem. What does that mean? We know it means that his hands are all over the place. Okay, and therefore what? So why should that be relevant that a person should have to wash his hands before touching Truma? So Rashi says, just like we saw the Rosh, that a person touches unclean places. Says Rashi, it's a gnai for truma. It's disrespectful to touch the truma when a person's hands are not clean. V'oid, when you touch the food when it's not clean, the food becomes mias. It becomes disgusting to a person to eat the food. So Chazal didn't want that a person should touch the truma, first of all being disrespectful to the truma, second of all when you touch it, you're not going to want to eat the truma anymore. Not in every case, but in some of the cases your hands are a little bit dirty. Therefore they made a Takanah across the board that before you touch truma, you have to wash your hands. And if you don't wash your hands, the Takanah was you have to wash your hands. And if you don't wash your hands, you passel the truma. That's explanation number one in the Takanah why you have to wash your hands before truma. That's a Rashi explains Sheidai Maskani, you say. There's another pshat Rashi brings b'shem Rabboisov, which it's brought in the Rach and the Rambam. The reason why you have to wash your hands before truma is because we're afraid that you're tamei. You're tamei. And if you're tamei and you touch the truma, you're metamei the truma. That's why you have to wash your hands. Rashi's bothered with this reason. First of all, if you're chayshish that you die, one second, why are we chayshish that a person's tamei? Like the Gemara says, Shahayadayim Eskani, said the reason has to fit into has to go with the words of the Gemara. Shahayadayim Eskani is saying that we're afraid that a person touched tumah. So that's reason number two why you have to wash your hands. But Rashi's bothered. First of all, if you're concerned that the person's hands are all over the place, maybe he touched a person that's a avatomah, so he's a rishon atomah. And furthermore, says Rashi, if a person's tamei, it doesn't help just to wash your hands. You have to go to the mikveh. So what does it help to wash your hands? That's the kashas that Rashi has, but that's the two pshatim. Again, we have two reasons why a person has to wash his hands by truma. Reason number one is shayadayim are dirty. We don't want you to make the food mius. And reason number two is not to metame the food. That's truma. Now, from truma, we extended it to chulin. The Mishnah says by us, noitlim liyadayim lechulin ulamaisu letruma. Noitlim liyadayim lechulin. Why? Why? What's the reason why? It's an extension to the netil of truma. This that we're going to wash tonight, Friday night before bread, the reason for the netila is because of truma. The Shulchan Aruch Harav explains very clearly and very nicely, and he breaks it down a little bit. The Mishnah Berurah brings of it as well. The concept is that because by truma the Chachamim wanted that you should wash your hands, the Chachamim said we want you to be comfortable and used to, you should wash even by chulin. Not only by truma, they extended it to chulin as well. Furthermore, on top of this, they said chulin atu truma. In other words, really what the Chachamim wanted, the mitzvah d'Rabbanan by truma, but the mitzvah d'Rabbanan of netil was by truma. But they wanted you should be so comfortable about it, so they said chulin, when you wash for bread, atu truma. Really, they don't need you to wash by truma, by chulin, but it's atu truma. Furthermore, Yisraelim, maybe only the Kahanim should do it by chulin. Atu truma. Furthermore, even Yisraelim, atu Kahanim, atu truma. And wait a second, we're not done yet. Dr. Shulchan Aruch Harav, and what's about Bizman Hazeh? Bizman Hazeh, we don't engage in truma. We're tamei, we don't eat truma Bizman Hazeh. So then today, we shouldn't have to wash before bread, before chulin. Tonight, why are we washing? Atu kahanim, atu truma. But there's no truma today. The teretz is Sheyibona Beis Hamikdash will be Zoicher Beis Hamikdash will come right now, and we're going to be right back into business with eating truma to Kahanim. So Memela, we wash before Noitel Nidayim L'Chulin, before we eat bread, Atu Chulin, Atu Truma, but it's us Yisraelim, Atu Kahanim, and then another Atu today, Atu B'Zman HaMikdash. So tonight, before the Hamoitzi, when you're going to wash, of course it's 100% a mitzvah d'Rabbanan, we make the bracha. But if you think for a minute, the reason we're washing our hands is Atu, when we have a Beis HaMikdash, Atu Kahanim, Atu Truma. So we just said now that we wash our hands for bread, Atu Truma. There are other Trumas also besides bread. So bread is dagon. The Torah says dagon. The Chameshes mean a dagon. We take a wash. These other peiros min Torah. There's some shittas that say all peiros, but even the Torah says yitzar, tirosh and yitzar, which the Ramban says, let's say minimum is only wine and oil, not even the olives and the grapes. We spoke about this over here in the Koilel Parshas Koirach. But for sure, wine and oil is chayiv b'trum min Torah. Undisputable. The Torah says that. So l'chayra, when we drink wine, we should also have to wash our hands. If the reason why we wash by chulin, by bread, is atu truma, this truma by bread, chameshes mina dagan, so l'chayra we should have to do the same thing by wine and by oil. So there are two answers to this. The Shulchan Aruch Harav says one teretz that wine and oil we don't touch. So yes, we don't touch. Of course it's atu truma, but the whole idea by truma is because you touch it for whatever the reason is, but you touch it. So here you don't touch it. We don't touch wine and we don't touch oil. You drink it. You don't touch it. So therefore you don't have to wash your hands. The Mishnah Berurah, the Chavetz Chaim brings a different reason, and he says, like gazru ella, by something that roif truma comes from it, which is taka interesting. I understand dagan is something that the whole world lives off dagan, off bread, of grains, but l'chayra, there's an enormous amount of truma coming from oil, from wine. But al-kapam, that's what the Chavetz Chaim says. That's why it's only by bread, because that's where it's shchiach. Furthermore, even in bread itself, cake also comes from chameshes mina dagan. So why didn't you have to wash your hands by cake also for the same atu truma? So this already the Shulchan Aruch Harav says is that it's not a shchiach. I don't know, maybe b'zman hazeh, I'm not sure, maybe it's different, but they say it's not a shchiach to use the chameshes mina dagan for cake, for pasababa kisron as bread. However, it's important to note like this, even though it's very clear that when we're going to wash tonight, or anytime we wash for Halachic Sidayim before Hamoitzi, it's noiveya. It comes out of truma. It's important to note that these differences between the netila of truma and the netila of chulin. And before the two chilukim of the netila, let's back up. I just want to point out that there's really even a chiluk before the netila. Truma, you're not allowed to touch truma without washing your hands. Bread, you're allowed to touch bread without washing your hands. The takanah is only if you eat. So this is already one nafkamina. Of course, our washing our hands before bread, chulin, comes from truma, but there's already a difference. Before the netila, even in the halacha itself, truma, you're not allowed to touch truma without washing your hands. Chulin, you're only not allowed to eat chulin, your bread, your challah tonight without washing your hands.
That was already the Takanah.
I don't know. You want to know if even then, by chulin, were you not allowed to touch, or it's only in the netila? I don't know. It would be interesting to say that they changed it now. We're going to see more chilukim also. So Pashas is chilukim are chilukim bechlal, because chulin is only neveh, but it's chilukim, and we'll soon see why it's chalak. Another chiluk is how much you have to wash your hands. For truma, the Bialacha brings in Siman Kuf Samach that when a person washes his hands for truma, you have to wash your hands, the full hand, medina, up the whole hand. Masha'enkein, when you wash your hands for hamoitzi, these are machloikis rishonim. The Shulchan Aruch brings in Siman Kuf Samach Aleph lahalacha, the machloikis if you have to wash your full hands or maybe only till the knuckles, like what we do, Yom Kippur. Machloikis. Avada Shulchan Aruch says that yesh lahachmer, but it's a yesh lahachmer. It's a machloikis rishonim. Mashenka by truma, one has to wash his full hand. And another nafkamin al-halacha between the netil of truma and the netil of chulin when we wash for bread is lagabe if a goy could wash your hands. The Mishmur brings in Siman Kuf Nun Tes. For truma, dafka yid has to be the person washing the hands before eating, touching truma. Mashega before bread, by chulin, a goy could wash your hands also.
Is also enough given if you don't have the filter down, you shouldn't touch the bread.
Yeah, Lamais is like this. You want to know if someone can't wash his hands, and the halach is that you don't touch the bread. Very good, very good. Lamais, it's not possible to go into all the prate halachas. You bring up very good about it. There's so many prate dinim in all the nekudas. Before we spoke about also, there's also a busig of which we do leila seid if you touch peiros that are wet. So, but this is, you're right, even in Alatilas, even in Hamoitzi also, if a person can't wash his hand, then you don't touch it. And the Chanami. Another point to bring out the difference between chulin and truma. When I say chulin, you shouldn't get thrown off. Chulin is negayah to us, which we wash before bread. If somebody touched the mekaymes hamatunafos, which means he's a middle of the suda, and then he scratched his head. So the Ramah on the end of Siman Kuf Samach Dal, it says, brought Shulchan Aruch and the Ramah, you get up, you wash your hands again, and you make al natilas yadayim. However, the Marshal argues, the Marshal says you don't. L'maisel halach, if we stop right here, we don't. You wash your hands, you don't make. But the Ramah says you make al natilas yadayim. The Marshal argues you do not. Zok the pri begadim and the psichet hilchas natilas yadayim. What's the shaila? What's the machlokes? Should you make al natilas yadayim or not? So he says it's totally in the reasons that we just mentioned before why a person should wash his hands. If the reason, like we saw from the Rosh, is because mekaymes hamatunafos, right? We said by truma why you have to wash your mekaymes hamatunafos. So if that's the case, it's very nice you washed your hands right before you started eating and you made a bracha, but now you touch mekaymes hamatunafos, you have to wash again with the bracha. That's the Rosh. However, the other Rishonim, the Rambam, they all say that the reason is not mekaymes hamatunafos. The reason is for tumah. If the reason is for tumah, so lamaisa you washed your hands before the suda. Nothing changed with this that you after you touch mekaymes hamatunafos. Nothing changed, right? Nothing changed. So memela you don't have to wash your hands again. So lamaisa is like this. The Shulchan Aruch that paskins that you wash with the bracha is because the Shulchan Aruch is paskining like the Rosh. However, and this is important, what I want to bring out, another nekuda, that the netila by chulin is different than by truma. What did we just say till now? The prima gadam, it's like a shmaka tliya. What's the reason we wash by truma? The Chavetz Chaim, it's a long bir halacha, and the Chavetz Chaim says it's a very nice tliya. What the reason why we wash the hands by truma if you have, and the sudas ought to that, if you should have to make al natilas yadayim. But Zok the Chavetz Chaim, I found in the Rishonim that bring both. That bring the reason is Mishum Toma. The Rach says Toma, and the Rach also says that in the middle of the Suda, you wash ubebracha. The Mela says the Chavetz Chaim, and this is very important. The Mela says like this, the following. He says like this: there are two reasons why we wash before a Suda. And this is very important. Up until now, to be crystal clear, we said already two reasons why we wash by Truma. One is Mepnei Metunafos, and one is Mepnei Atuma. And that's the same thing by Chulin also. Says the Chavetz Chaim that when you wash before bread, there's yet another reason why we wash, unrelated to Truma. So what we said till now, Noitim liyadayim lechulin, is because of Truma. There's yet another reason not related to Truma, and the reason is based off the Gemara and Brachas. Mishnah Berurah himself brings in the beginning of Hilchos Netilas Yadayim by bread. The Gemara and Brachas Nun Gimel Amad Beis at the end of the Perek. Tana, it's a brayso of Iskadishtem, Elu Mayim Rishonim. In other words, Mayim Rishonim you wash before a Suda, Mishum Nekiyas, Mishum Kedusha, unrelated to Truma. Unrelated to Truma. Memela, that's what the Chavetz Chaim is Miyashiv, that if a person scratches his hair in middle of the Suda, so even though if the reason is Mishum Tumah, and therefore you shouldn't have to wash, still the Rach says you wash because of this Kadishtem to be Kaddish by a Suda. Of course, La Halacha, we do not make a bracha, but what we have so far, and then just mamash one more minute, but we have so far very clearly, tonight when you're going to wash Hamoitzi, number one, it's Atu when there's a Beis HaMikdash, Atu Yisraelim, Atu Kahanim, Atu Truma. I said in the wrong order. You wash by Chulin, Atu Truma, Yisraelim, Asi Yisraelim, Atu Kahanim, and even Bizman Hazeh, Atu when there's a Beis HaMikdash. Why do you wash? Three reasons. Reason number one is Metunafos, by Truma, and that's the same reason before Hamoitzi. Reason number two is Toma, like the Rishonim say, who are did by Chulin. And reason number three, not related to Truma, is Pashat, to be Kaddish, to eat Benekiyas, to eat when a person's Halig. Just to conclude with one more Nekuda, which is the same idea, that tonight when we wash, or anytime we wash Hamoitzi, is yet another idea, another reason besides Truma, is Mavur, the Briskerov and Stencil and Saita Dav Dalet Amad Beis. He goes on the Gemara. This is important. We can't say this whole shiur without mentioning, of course, the Gemara. He goes on the Gemara, and the Gemara says the following. First, before the Gemara, he just says that it's Chalak be'ikroi, the din atila by Truma to the din atila by Chulin. By Truma, there's no din of a Maisa Natila. The Ikr is Yatar. You're not Tameh, you're not dirty, you're not Mechlachos. There's no din of a Maisa Tar. Just like if a person needs to go to the mikveh for whatever reason, there's a din of a Maisa going to the mikveh. You just need the after effect that you were in the mikveh and Yatar. That's by Truma. By Chulin, of course it's Atu Truma, but there's yet another din when we're going to wash tonight. Besides that, we want the after effect of the washing, which means afterwards to be tahar. We also want a maisa netila, moiridik. When we're going to wash tonight, there's one thing that we have the after effect that now we're tahar, we're not mulachlachos, we're not tamei, but there's yet another din of a maisa pu'ula, a maisa tahara. And he explains this in the Gemara in Chulin, and with this I'm going to conclude. The Gemara says, it's a Gemara in Chulin Kovav Amar Aleph, Zok the Gemara, Netilas Yadayim. We can't speak about Netilas Yadayim without mentioning this Gemara, but he brings the Gemara. The Gemara says, Netilas Yadayim Mishum Srach Tumah. Why do we wash Netilas Yadayim? Mishum Tumah. We're familiar with this reason. Zok the Gemara, Va'oid. You know why we wash Netilas Yadayim? Va'oid Mishum Mitzvah. First of all, Srach Tumah, Va'oid Mishum Mitzvah. So the Gemara says, my mitzvah. What's the mitzvah? So the Gemara says, mitzvah l'shmoya divrei chachamim. One is Tumah, one is mitzvah l'shmoya divrei chachamim. So Taisus asks a question, what do you say, my mitzvah? What do you mean? mitzvah. The Gemara says the reason why you wash, what's the void? The reason why you wash is Hashem Truma. So Tosfos says, you know what the void is in the Gemara? One reason you wash is Misham Toma. Void Zak Tosfos Misham Nekiyas. Explains the Brisker of. I'm saying it very bekitza, but this Yisoid, and this is important. What the Gemara is saying, and what Tosfos was bothered is, what do you mean void Misham Mitzvah? What do you mean? The Gemara says Misham Tuma. The Gemara says void Misham Mitzvah, meaning to say is like this. Reason number one, you wash Srach Tuma. That's the same reason like by Tuma, just to be tar. V'oy Misham Mitzvah. What does it mean Misham Mitzvah? Misham Mitzvah is because there's a Maisa Mitzvah to go and wash your hands. Like what we just said before, the concept. Truma, you only have to make sure you're tar. By Chulin, there's another din besides making sure you're tar. The after effect is to go Misham Mitzvah, like the Gemara says, to do a Maisa Mitzvah, to wash your hands. Like we said, Misham Nekiyas. So just to sum it up, we wash our hands before our Monsey tonight. When you're going to wash on Natilas Yadayim, it's Atu Chulin Atu Truma, Yisraelim Atu Kahanim. When there's no Beis HaMikdash, Atu Beis HaMikdash Kayim. There are three reasons. These reason number one, Misham Yadayim Ulachlachais. Reason number two, Misham Tuma, which is applicable by Truma, and we say Chulin. Reason number three is Misham Kedusha Nekiyas V'Skadishtem. And it's not only in the reason of Netilas Yadayim, it's actually when you're washing, by Truma when you wash, it's not, of course you have to wash and you make al Netila, but it's just that you should have the after effect that you tar. Mashenke by Chulin tonight when you're going to wash, like we saw from the Brisker of, there's yet another din. The Chachamim gave us a mitzvah to do a Maisa Pu'ula of washing, like what we saw from the Kier. Even if a kohen is tar, there's a din you wash from the Kier. That's the Maisa, the Pu'ula of washing to be tar. Have a wonderful Shabbos.